Hi, and welcome to another Q&A segment on pianoTV. So today we're going to talk about the question, how do you organize your time at the piano bench once you're there? So how much time should you spend practicing piano? How much time should you spend on things like scales and technique? And what about other things that are often forgotten like sight reading or ear training? So we'll talk about all these things and how I think is the best way to structure your practice sessions. Everyone's going to have a little bit of a different practice plan. It just depends on your skill level, how much time you have to commit, and that kind of thing. But in general, I find that breaking up your practice session into 6 different areas is the best way to go about it. So the 6 areas would be a warm-up, practicing technique, practicing sight reading, your lesson stuff, which can further be subdivided into more parts, and working on fun stuff, which isn't really work, and lastly, ear training. So let's talk about those individual segments. So first off is the warm-up. So the warm-up really doesn't need to be anything bigger than 5 minutes spent just doing something simple and light to loosen up the fingers, which will make it easier to play your pieces and will also help prevent injury. So for a warm-up, you could do technique as long as the exercises are really, really easy. Or you could play like an easy song, something gentle, or you could have like a little jam session with yourself and just do some quick improv. But the mantra you want to have with a warm-up is make it really quick and easy, no more than 5 minutes. The second part is technique. Now, this can be divided into 2 different parts. So first of all, you have the kind of technique that's like scales and arpeggios and triads. So the kind of like simple and repetitive tasks that are gonna make your fingers more coordinated. And the second part are things called etudes or studies, which are basically pieces that are designed to build one specific skill. And these pieces are easy to find because they're usually called etudes or studies. So I find that doing both is really important to a technical practice. And I think for someone who's just beginning, 10 to 15 minutes on technique, which might include doing a few scales and then working on an etude, I think that's enough. For someone who's advanced, when I do technique, I usually spend about half an hour in maybe a larger 3-hour session. But I think 10 to 15 minutes for a shorter hour-ish long session is enough. Next up is sight reading. So I generally like to do sight reading at this point for about 5 to 10 minutes because I find that my brain is still really fresh because I've just kind of started at the piano. Whereas if I leave sight reading to the end of the session, I don't usually do as good of a job because I'm a little bit taxed. But you don't even have to do sight reading as a part of like your main practice session. You could just do it at random times, basically whenever you feel is going to work best for your schedule. So make sure when you're sight reading that you pick pieces that are slightly below your level because you want to be able to play through something correctly at first pass. Even if it's really slow, that doesn't matter. But if you're sloughing through it and you're like hitting everything wrong, just simplify the pieces. It's kind of like with reading words. You don't read like huge words before you read small words, and then you don't read small words before you learn letters. See? Interesting analogy. So you kind of have to build it one step at a time. Next is lesson pieces. So this category can be further subdivided into 4 different parts and 4 different types of pieces. So number 1 is you have the pieces that you haven't learned yet. They're brand new and you gotta just start from square one. Number 2 is pieces that you've learned through, but you're not very good at, so you need to get better at. Number 3 is for pieces you're just putting the finishing touches on. So you've already learned it. Maybe there's just like a couple tricky spots and you need to polish it. And then the 4th aspect of this is working on memorized pieces or working on memorizing pieces. I find it's really good to have a balance of all 4 categories when you're practicing because say you have a bunch of new songs to learn and that's it can be really overwhelming and sometimes discouraging to go to the piano when it's just like all new and it takes a lot of mental effort. So it's good to have a balance. As for how long to spend doing this, I think for a regular adult beginner, 20 to 30 minutes on lesson material should be more than enough. Obviously, someone more advanced might spend up to 2 hours doing this, but it really depends who you are and where you're at. Next up is the for fun category. So please do not neglect this category, even though it seems like, just for fun, it's not that important. It's super important because when you're learning piano, a lot of what you're doing kind of feels like work, even if it's really rewarding. So I think it's super important to play those pieces that you love, but you finished a long time ago. Or do what I do for fun sometimes is I'll play piano and sing. or maybe you might do some improvising, or maybe you do some writing. Basically, anything that is fun to you here is fair game. Anything that doesn't feel like work when you do it. So it's hard to put a time limit on fun, but I think again, for an average beginner, 5 to 10 minutes in a practice session is about right. I mean, go longer if you want to. Who am I to stop you? And finally, we have ear training, which is sometimes a neglected aspect of learning piano. So I don't think this needs to be something you necessarily attach to your practice block, but if you download an app or find something on your tablet that allows you to do ear exercises for like 2 or 3 minutes here and there, I think that's fine, because we often have those pockets in our day where we're just kind of like twiddling our thumbs, and that's an opportune moment to get a little bit of ear training in. And this doesn't need to be more than 5 minutes. It doesn't even have to be every day, but also, just like sight reading, don't skip this, because this is something that can get neglected, and I think it's really important to develop your ear. A couple things that you might do and that these programs might help you with are to tell different types of chords apart, like major or minor, or being able to tell intervals apart, like fourths and sevenths and stuff like that, or, hearing different rhythms, that kind of thing. So when you add it all up, these 6 different aspects of piano practice end up totaling 50 minutes on the low end and about 75 minutes on the high end, which might seem like a lot, and it is a lot if you're just sitting down and kind of randomly playing. You'll find that the time won't move very fast, but with 6 different aspects of piano practice and a lot of subdivisions within some of those categories, you'll find that it'll keep you busy and the time will go by really fast. That's what I find in my experience anyway. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any other suggestions for practice or how you like to spend your time when you practice, leave that in the comments below, because it'll help everyone. And I like hearing your ideas because you often have very nice insights and I enjoy reading it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Hanging out in the sunroom, being a cat, being a cat. Yeah.